Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Today we have Mark Medina, the Lakers beat writer for the LA Daily News. Mark, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks. It's the off season, and there's really nothing to talk about right with the Lakers.
Oh, there's probably nothing we can figure out at all. I have to tell you, it is a little strange not to have any kind of playoff basketball in LA. No flags in the cars or anything.
Yeah, it's so crazy watching all this playoff basketball, and the Lakers aren't in it. You know what? Considering how badly this season went for the Lakers, right now I've seen plenty of good basketball in the past 3 weeks, much better than what I saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's been pretty riveting. At least in the East, it's been pretty riveting. I know I'm as depressed as anybody. We only saw 4 games out of the Spurs versus Grizzlies. So
they're just a well-oiled machine. I mean, and what's so funny watching the Spurs, right? They're like, I mean, everyone knows they're, the perfect foil for the Lakers. And I think that is obviously in full, case this year. I mean, there's no drama. They know everyone's role. Everyone's eager to adapt, and they have that continuity with the coaching staff as well with Greg Popovich.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the Lakers a little bit here, because certainly you have your ear to the ground and listening to what's happening. Everyone wants to know what's going to happen with Dwight. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Does he want to save money on taxes in Texas? What's happening with him?
There's a lot more weeks to figure that out, but as of right now, I talked with someone who's fairly familiar with, or not fairly familiar, incredibly familiar with his thought process. And as of right now, he's been thinking about 5 teams: the Lakers, the Dallas Mavericks, Houston Rockets, Atlanta Hawks, Golden State Warriors. Now, keep in mind, these are teams that Dwight Howard is interested in, and it's all subject to change because there's so many more weeks before free agency starts. But that's where his head is at right now, but there's going to be a lot more clarity in weeks to come.
And really, what is it that's going to drive his decision? Is it going to be basketball? Is it going to be lifestyle? What do you think?
From what I've been told, it's pretty simple. He wants to measure which team gives him the best chance to win an NBA championship, has the most talent, and has the best system that's catered to his skill set. And you would think that in all years, the Lakers are the obvious choice. They have those 16 NBA championships. It's Los Angeles. They always get the top-heavy talent. But as you saw this year, flaming out in the first round, they have an old roster, and he had a lot of philosophical differences regarding what his role was with Mike D'Antoni. So I wouldn't say that the Lakers are a clear-cut winner in this chase.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Kobe and Dwight's relationship, because I feel like that would definitely influence what Dwight wants to do. Is it rocky? Is it not?
It's obvious. It's not Shaq and Kobe. I mean, they actually had a lot of deeply rooted animosity. I think that there's just frustration. I mean, Kobe Bryant, he's the ultimate competitor. He's very serious. Dwight Howard, he's competitive as well, but he has a more jovial personality, and I think that kind of came to odds. And then there was an incident later on this season when Dwight Howard was having, his issues with his shoulder, where, especially because Pau Gasol was just out at that point having problems with his foot, Kobe was basically insinuating, there needs to be more urgency for him to be able to come back on the floor. He took offense to that. But, I think relative to the beginning of the season, it has improved. I mean, you've seen since the All-Star break, Dwight Howard having better conditioning, having a bigger mindset as far as, owning that defensive responsibilities. And, when Kobe Bryant, tore his left Achilles tendon, Dwight was one of the first to visit Kobe at his Newport Beach residence. And no one ever visits Kobe at his house. Not even Derek Fisher had ever been to his house. So I think that, it's definitely improved, but it still has a long way to go.
Okay, so we'll see. I suppose that's not going to be, he's not going to say no to the Lakers because Kobe is going to come back.
From what I've been told, I mean, you have to take it for what it is, but from what I've been told, Dwight has and won't advocate any type of changes that the Lakers need to make on his behalf, whether it's, a coaching change or players on the roster. Obviously, Kobe Bryant isn't going anywhere, but at the end of the day, the most important variable from what I've been told that Dwight's weighing is what team will give him that best chance to win an NBA title in the immediate future. And obviously, when you have Kobe Bryant on your team, the odds substantially help. But again, this team is very old. You never know if they're going to be able to be completely healthy. And I think as you've seen this season, there's still some issues to I guess, sort out as far as the chemistry goes.
Well, if I have to put my 2 cents in, certainly in '09 when the Magic went to the finals, the biggest issue I had with Dwight's role was that he had to get every single rebound that was on the floor when he was out there without any help. And if he went to Houston and they kept Asik, suddenly they play together a little bit. That pressure isn't there. They have shooters. They have good players and a good coach. If I had to put my 2 cents in, I would say that would be the best chance he has with the roster that as it is to win.
Yeah, and James Harden, Jeremy Lin, they're a very young, up-and-coming talent. They can push the floor. I know that's something that Dwight lamented plenty of times this season, that his own physical limitations with his back and shoulder and just all his teammates around him, given the fact that they're mostly over 30, really prevented them from being able to be that up-and-down team. Houston has so much depth, and they can run up and down the floor. Kevin Mchale, he's an up-and-coming coach, and he obviously has cemented himself as a pretty good post player back in his days in Boston. But you know what? That will be an adjustment as well, because they still run primarily pick and rolls. And that's something that Dwight wasn't always a fan of, running those schemes to the degree that Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash wanted to run. So it'll be interesting to see how that sorts out. Then you add James Harden. He's a high-volume scorer, just like Kobe Bryant. Different personalities, but still a dynamic that they'll have to work out.
Well, let me give you a little hint, because we've been breaking down Dwight's postgame for quite a while, and you were a lot better off, Dwight, when you were doing high pick and rolls, diving in the rim, and then giving the ball. And then why go with don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on to Kobe here, because we have some issues there. They're talking about amnesty. We're talking about the injury.
He's not getting amnesty. Let's just lay that to bed.
Right, okay. So for sure, you have it on high there. That's not going to be an
They're
issue.
never going to do that. I mean, one, it would be a public relations nightmare. The L.A. fan base would riot all over the city. You waive Kobe Bryant, but also, I think it's two things. One, what kind of message would this send? The Lakers are, considered the esteemed franchise, not just in the NBA, but in all of sports. Or for them to make a cost-cutting move to one of their stars, what does that say about how they view those superstar players? And you look in the near future. I mean, obviously there are more concerns regarding, the new punitive measures because of the labor deal. But when you're trying to attract free agents, those high-profile ones, I think that will, stick in the back of their mind. But more importantly, they're confident that Kobe Bryant's going to come back within possibly the beginning of the season, for possibly the season opener, if not maybe 1 or 2 months. And even though I think everyone expects that, just realistically speaking, because of the severity of the torn Achilles tendon, that he won't have the same explosiveness and athleticism they had this year, he'll still be a very good player and will be an integral part in helping this team.
Well, I would not put it past Kobe to do anything that he says he can do. So that's the one guy I would say, no one thinks he can come back inside of a year. But if it's going to be anyone that can do it, it's going to be Kobe. Certainly, Dominique Wilkins did it, but didn't have nearly as much miles on his legs at the time as Kobe has. And so this is going to be, all I can tell you, it'll be interesting. I don't know if anyone can predict accurately what's going to happen, but certainly we're going to be watching that closely. You feel like he's going to be able to come back at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, and I think, Kobe's admitted to some degree in his ex-interview where, he might not be the same player, losing his athleticism and all that. And I've talked to a lot of outside medical experts after his injury, and, I know Kobe likes to use things as a motivation, but I don't think anyone is doubting whether he can return. I think that the uncertainty is to what degree can he still manufacture enough to still be that elite player. And, if I had to take an educated guess, I think what you're going to see is he's not going to have the same speed and athleticism where he's going to be able to throw down dunks at will like he did last year. And instead, he'll just rely more on his fundamentals. I mean, he's shown a lot of ability to really use his footwork and separating space off his defender, find himself open jumpers, and then, it comes down to, tweaking some various nuances. I mean, last year, a lot of his athleticism, he said, was rooted in the fact that he shed 16 pounds just by simple dieting, cutting out sugar and, pizza out of his diet. So I think that he'll continue to perfect all those various nuances just to try to offset as much as possible some of the inevitable diminishing that he'll experience just because of how serious this injury is.
Well, I'm going to try cutting out pizza from my diet too. I wonder,
how's that been going so far? Pretty good?
I think it's been helping quite a bit. Now, speaking of amnesty, then let's talk a little bit about Metta World Peace, because he certainly is out there, and we don't know what's going to happen with him. What's his situation, and what's going to happen?
He's almost in a catch-22 situation because he has 1 year remaining on his contract. It's a player option, so it's up to him whether he wants to opt in and stick around for that next season or opt out in hopes of getting a longer-term deal. Now, Metta wants to be a Laker. He loves this organization. He's really appreciative of the fact that they signed him to a 5-year deal in 2009. He obviously won his first championship here. That's elevated his platform in terms of his stature as a player and his ability to really, have a vocal campaign with mental health awareness. So he wants to be with the Lakers. But here's where the catch-22 comes in. If he opts out of his deal, there is a possibility that the Lakers could let him walk. The Lakers are, very mindful of the fact that Steve Nash and Dwight Howard, if he comes back, will be the only 2 players that are under contract after next season. Then you look at the wave of free agents that could be possibilities: LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony. We can debate all we want whether those guys would come to the Lakers, but the Lakers do want to make that push and have the financial flexibility. So, when you look at Metta World Peace, I don't know if they really want to add on additional years, not just to him, but to anybody. But if he does opt in to exercise that player option to stay for next season, he could be one of the candidates to be waived via the amnesty provision. And here's how the labor deal was set up. It's almost like a get out of jail free type card, and it was set up for players that were signed under contract before the new labor deal. So under the Lakers, it could be Kobe Bryant, but that's not happening. Could be Pau Gasol, could be Metta World Peace, or Steve Blake. But I think that when you look at the fact that Pau Gasol, as much as they would save $19 million, I don't know if they're really willing to give up that type of level of talent for essentially nothing other than just saving a bunch of money. So I think, if he does opt in, there's a strong possibility that he would be waived through that measure.
Well, that's really interesting to see, because you have to kind of think about that. Where I don't see anyone talking much about it is the notion of, if Metta World Peace forces the issue by saying, I want to remain a Laker, he's opening up the possibilities of him getting kicked out.
Right, and he hasn't decided one way or the other yet. I've been told that he has been encouraged to go the route where he does opt in, just because there might be a better chance for him to stay because they won't have to add additional years on his contract. But you just never know with these things. And then also, if he were to get waived, he'd still be getting that $7.7 million in salary and a chance for a team to claim their services on him. But it remains to be seen what he's going to do. The deadline for that is June 25th. So there's still a few weeks away before any definite clarity will come up on that.
Well, let's look at Pau Gasol's landscape here, because he's always been under the topic of trade rumors for the last
ever since that next Chris Paul deal. It's been crazy for him,
and it deeply affected him, right?
Yeah. I think it affected him in the sense that he sometimes lacked confidence when he was going through adversity. I think it was easy to, overstate it, because he still played well. He still, had a really professional attitude and wanting to make it perfectly clear that he wants to be with the Lakers. He doesn't take offense, even though it's not an ideal situation. He doesn't take offense to the fact that the Lakers haven't given him definitive answers on his standing. So he had the right attitude, but there were times, I think, where his confidence waned. His confidence waned when things weren't going well. So it was a perpetuating cycle. But he's still been playing well when he's been featured to his strengths inside.
Absolutely. I think he reminded us all toward the end of the year that he is one of the best post-up players, and when D'Antoni could figure out a way to get him in that position, he can do some serious damage, even at 32.
So, yeah, and you know what? You look at the numbers that both Dwight Howard and Pau Gasol had in April. It was around like 21, 20, highest numbers that they had. And obviously they both struggled against the Spurs, but I think a lot of that had to do with the fact there's no Kobe Bryant. There really wasn't anyone else that could create their shot. You add in the fact that Steve Nash was injured, so was Steve Blake for a few of those games, and the easy formula was for the Spurs to just relentlessly double team the post and not let them get openings in the closer to the basket.
And so let's finish with Mike D'Antoni. He's gotten the public backing from the management. They're not going to replace him. How much water does that carry?
I think it carries a lot, but even though the Lakers front office won't say it, I take their ringing endorsement with somewhat of a grain of salt. He's definitely coming back next year. There's not going to be any coaching changes. Phil Jackson isn't coming back to coach the Lakers. Sorry, Laker fans that always chant his name. But, the language that Mitch Kupchak has used about Mike D'Antoni, as much as he says that he's impressed with how the Lakers closed out with the 28-12 record to close out the season and that he made adjustments, a lot of his praise was always couched with all the extenuating circumstances, the overlapping injuries, the fact that there was no training camp, the fact that there was an adjustment period for him and the players to find somewhat of a common ground for them to, find their skill set and their roles within his system. But it almost reminded me the fact of how they spoke about Mike Brown his first year. They, gave him a ringing endorsement, but it was couched with other extenuating circumstances. Lockout shortened season, shortened training camp, aftermath of the Chris Paul deal, everything regarding losing Lamar Odom, Pau Gasol not being the same player because of the trade rumors. So what I'm getting at is that I don't know if it's really much of a ringing endorsement as the fact that, we're going to give him a pass to see what he can do next season with a full training camp, presumably with some players that may be a better fit for his system, and the fact that he'll have more familiarity with this current roster. But that being said, the Lakers have always judged coaches on wins and losses, and I don't think that the Lakers would be happy with another first-round playoff exit, let alone falling short of another title.
Well, the funny thing I find about this is that they brought Mike D'Antoni in to run a system. That's what he specializes in. Not as much the defensive end, but he has a very quick up-tempo thing. They discovered eventually that it wasn't working, and so now he had to change up and use a lot of other sets he's not comfortable with doing.
Yeah.
So why have him there if he's not going to do the thing you brought him in there to do?
Well, I think a lot of the rationale that both the front office and D'Antoni says is, look, we didn't know that Steve Nash would be out as long as he would be. And he has a lot of point guard skills. He knows Mike D'Antoni's system in Phoenix. And I think that was valid to a certain degree in terms of knowing the roles, the familiarity with how to run the pick and rolls and all that. But where I do fault Mike's mindset with that is that doesn't exactly address the pace that he was wanting the players to run. I mean, Steve Nash is 39 years old anyway, but even with Steve Nash out, he was still asking a lot of the players, Pau Gasol, Dwight Howard, even with their injury limitations and the fact that they're not 100%, to be running up and down the floor. And you look at this roster, it doesn't suit their capabilities. And, I think the rhetoric at the beginning of it was they just thought, oh, it's a conditioning issue. They just need to work harder. And, to some degree that could be the case. But I think in most cases, just the fact that, look, these guys are more suited to play a more slow it down game, more featured inside, be very methodical with your possessions. And not only would that bring more clarity to offense, but you look at the Achilles heel the Lakers have, they would get crushed on transition defense. Anytime they turn the ball over, especially against the Oklahoma City Thunder, Golden State Warriors, they're done. All those teams were just running out on the open floor, and you add those baskets up, and all of a sudden you're down by double digits. And I think by slowing the tempo down, it would be more likely for them to reduce that amount of turnovers if they were able to go to that pace earlier in the season.
Well, we shall see. He didn't do himself any favors by benching Pau Gasol and saying. And by the way, in that particular game, he was right. Pau Gasol was playing very.
He wasn't playing well. And Antoine Jamison was just lighting it up.
So of course he wanted to win, but he discovered a little quickly that Pau might be a little bit more sensitive than your average NBA player.
He is very sensitive. He's a professional guy, but he's very sensitive.
Well. Mark, thanks for coming on the show. Don't forget, if you want to follow him on Twitter, tell us what your Twitter handle is.
It's easy. Mark G, and then you have to remember the underscore Medina. That's Medina.
Well, he's got the latest in Laker news straight from the mouths of the players and the management and the coaches, so make sure you follow him. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win? You win, Mark?
Yep, put me in. I'm ready to play.
All right.